Good morning. I'm here to start to finish up this process. Yesterday, we laid out the original square. We did 5 steps where we put different layers on using our leaf templates and created a negative painting, which today we're going to shadow the areas around the leaves to make them stand out, create a top layer by putting color on the top two most leaves. And then we're going to see what else we might want to do to it, maybe add some veins. The idea here, though, is the detail similar to the color. So the color goes from light to dark, top to bottom. The detail also should go from top to bottom. So we have that sense of depth. Now, one thing I want you to notice, I wasn't specific on the bottom layer about creating leaf shades. But as you can see, based on the way I stroked even around it, it looks like there could be still leaves under, even in the dark section. So just because I had tide lines and overlapping strokes, at first where those seemed uneven, for the last layer it makes sense that since we painted over every layer, every time we change colors, we end up with this really kind of cool modeling effect that looks like leaves. Now, I have to say this, I paint the way I like to look at pictures. The reason I will stay at a painting is because it has to, and again, this is just for me, everybody has their different thing, but for me, something has to make me stay there and wonder, wow, oh wow, maybe what was he thinking? Wow, what's this supposed to be? Oh, I wonder where this could also go. Just a million things keep me there. If I see something that looks like a photograph, don't get me wrong, I admire the heck out of it. I think what amazing skill was involved, but I promise there's no way I stay as long admiring it, because I don't have to find things in it. It's just right there for me. And I'm not saying that I don't like it, let's say, even more than a photograph. Sure I do. But it doesn't really do for me the same thing as a kind of impressionist work where I have to use my brain. So the way I try to paint is the way I like to see paintings. Again, everyone does it differently. So I try to leave stuff out. Less is more. And I know that sounds like really weird, but truly less is more. Okay. Enough blabbing, because doing this real time, obviously I'm taking a lot of time and I don't want to rush, but you can speed this up, you can look at it later, whatever. You don't have to listen to my crazy ideas. But what I wanted to do is show you something I think is super important, and I've wanted to show this for a really long time. I'm going to put this aside. I'm going to use a separate little piece of paper here, and I am going to find either a pencil or something laying around here, because as always, he's really ready to do this. He turns his thing on and he doesn't have all his tools. All right, the point is, I want to show you how to blend, and I could show you because I want to shadow around the leaves like we did in our first. But before I show you how to do that, I want you to have an idea of what I'm doing. Okay, so blending requires 2 brushes, the way I do it. And I try to find brushes that are pretty close in size. One is slightly larger than the other. Okay, clear water, important, because one brush has to be in clear water. It can't be sopping wet though. It has to be damp. That's going to be your blending brush. The other brush will be your color brush. So let me just clean this brush a little bit. And so you always want to have a paper towel handy. Whoops. Paper towel. I bunch up a paper towel typically. I'll put it here. Have it handy. I've got my 2 brushes, making sure they're fairly clean. This one is going to be my blending brush. So the big brush is your blending brush. The little brush is your painting brush. All right. So I'm going to let's just draw out. I have this really strange canvas size. I like it. And I'm going to go ahead and, just for this demo sake, I'll just go ahead and just really quickly, I'll put a bottom thing here. I'm going to just draw a tree trunk. Okay. Certainly we can make it go off to the side if we want to, anywhere, but just going to draw a basic tree trunk here. Yeah, of course we're going to have to put some branches, but we'll just do it where it goes off like this, just to give you an idea. Now, of course, trick. All right, so the idea here is, typically with blending, and the same thing with the leaf painting, light has to come from someplace. Why is he talking about light? He's talking about blending. Well, every object has a darker side and a lighter side. Well, how do you achieve that in painting? Well, you could certainly paint stripes of dark and go lighter, lighter, lighter as you were going to go. But I'm going to pretend that the light is coming from that direction. okay? So that means that I'm going to want this side of my tree to be darker than this side. Again, many ways to achieve that. I've seen a lot of ways. You can stripe it, you can do all kinds of stuff. But I'm going to show you how to do it with blending. And I promise you, once you see this and sort of like get it, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, the things I can do with this, because it's true. You can make any outline show. You can do so much with blending. So I'm going to take some burnt umber, quit yapping. I'm going to put a little bit into I'm going to go pretty dark here because I want to blend it over. I'm going to put a dab into a bowl. And I'm going to go ahead and dump some water in there so I can prep it. And people who are really beginners, I know, appreciate seeing how much I put in. I don't mean to bore you with this. A lot of people would start a video with already mixed paint, and they wouldn't show it at all. So I put about a half a pea size in here, and I'm sort of filling my compartment with water. I have several porcelain mixing bowls. You've seen the one with 5 compartments. This one has 7 compartments. I just love them. I can't tell you how much I love them. They're just so easy to work with. These paints in here can be rehydrated. I'm not using them for this particular piece, but again, they're there. All right, so now I've got a brush that I'm going to use for my painting, and I've got a blending brush. So let's go ahead and mix this brown in here so I can get a nice dark brown. Make sure it's all mixed. I want it thick because what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend it from left to right. And the way I do that is in slow, careful steps, starting on the left at the bottom. You could start from the top, however you want to do it. I'm going to make sure my blending brush is not soaking wet. If I squeeze it, I'm not seeing water come off, but it's wet. And the idea here, I'll try not to get my head in the shot. If I do, I'm sorry. Start here, thick line. Remember, the light's coming from the right. I'll stop here. I'm going to take my damp brush, and I'm going to start right here at the edge of this. I'm going to blend this with the damp brush all the way over to the right. See what's happening? I created a gradient from this way to that way, and it's that easy. How do I continue? Same thing. Now, I'm not on an angle. I could be on a little bit of an angle, but I'm not. I'm going to start here. I'm going to go up. Blend it out to the right. It's funny, as you do it, you watch it, and you're like, oh, I'm not sure. And as you go, the more you do, the more you realize, wow, it really does do what I want it to do. Because the idea is you want the most pigment to be on the left, behind the tree. Now, you could come back later and do this with more colors. Burnt umber is very, very permanent. So it's not going to move. You're not lifting this once it's on here. So if I wanted to thicken this up, if the sun, something I do a lot is I'll paint the tree first really light yellow, because let's say it's a sunset, and then I'll lay the brown over that. But always with this dark part here. If you said, hey, I want more, he just dipped the blending brush in the colors. It's okay. We'll make it a blending brush again. If I want it to be darker, it's not going to hurt it. While it's still wet, I can still go on this side, right? I try not to do too much at once because you don't want it to dry, and still pull it. I can still pull it over to the right. No problem. Look how nice. To me, when I learned this, I realized, wow, I can really do a lot of 3D things now. All I have to do is realize what direction the light's coming from, and I can make something look like it's 3D. And when you take this, you have to think about it a little bit, right? Because let's say you get up to the branches. Not that this was going to be a little demo on how to paint trees, but in general, think about how the light goes. It's still going to be on the top of this branch in our little Y tree here, right? Still going to be on the top of this branch. but probably some weird complexities might come into effect here where the fork is. And here, I'm going to blend from here up. So do the same thing here. I could have gone to a smaller brush if I wanted to make it, less of a blend. Now I'm getting a little bit of a dry in this brush, in my blendy brush. So I'm going to wet it again. I use my fingers like this on it, and then I'll rub it on a paper towel just so I can get back in there. And use some clear water on the top. So again, light's pushing from this way. Now, on this side, right, light's hitting this here. So you'd want to go the other way on here. I'm going to try to do a thinner line so I don't have to blend out. So just put a line there and go very small. Don't do the whole thing. I mean, in this case, I probably could have, but if you have a big tree, just do it like an inch at a time. And now on this side, of course, the light hits this part. So now you've got light coming this way, hitting here, hitting this part, making the tree look more like a 3D object. Now, of course, the cool thing about trees is you could smush some paint in here anywhere you want. You could on the dark side, you can add some bark. You can make it back run it. Come back in here with your blendy brush. Every area here that's hard, if you want to make it soft, just hit it with this blendy brush. And again, blendy brush is just water brush, damp, not soaking, and that will soften off all these edges. So now you've got this whole contour map here. You can make work with the light. Again, let's try to keep it dark on this side. So if you see any light spots developing here with my random dabbers, you just put some dark there. Keep it somewhat consistent. This thing is going to have something going down here probably, right? So now all of a sudden we're painting trees. What are you doing, Russ? I just wanted to show you guys how to blend and get stuff to come out. Okay, so now the idea here with our painting is we are going to take the same blending technique. I'm going to put this over here. Oops, sorry about that. Grab my work in progress. And what I want to do is I'm going to come on top of these top leaves with red. So as I brush that here, I want these leaves to separate themselves, but I'm not going to necessarily expect that unless I differentiate them. And the way I'm going to do that, so let's think about the light here. The light could be coming straight down here, no problem, right? But if it does, it might not be as cool as if the light was coming from an angle. And the reason I say this is because it will create more of a 3D effect if we don't shade every side of the leaves, if we just shade one side. If the light was coming from this way, for instance, we would shade the back sides, right? If it was coming from this way, we would shade the front sides. So just looking at kind of where the shade would look best, I might flip it and have the light coming from here and doing the shade on the back sides of these leaves. It's not going to matter here because we're dark, but it would be here. And that would give me some cool shade. And I probably wouldn't shade too many under layers. Okay, so how does this work? Well, we're going to change blends because I'm not going to go with the brown. I'm going to shade in dark. So my mixes from yesterday, you can see that my mixing bowl has maintained its, I didn't even cover it just overnight, just sitting here. This is my dark mix over here. This was where I painted this layer from, and this was just French ultramarine and burnt umber. Now, another thing that happens that's an important thing to note, that if you make something too thin and you're bummed about it, just let it sit overnight. Let it sit for a couple of hours and the water will evaporate, typically, and you'll end up with a thicker mix. Okay, so I like this as my shadow mix, but I have to be careful because if I use a wide brush, I'm just going to have this giant black line. So the idea here is I'm going to use a thin rigger brush. I will show it to you. My tree over here, my brush box, and find me a thin rigger, something to make outlines with. Okay, so I'm going to go with it's too thick. Let's see. We'll go with this one. Okay, and I guess I'm gonna use the bigger one. Remember I said with blending, you want to set up 2 close brushes, one larger for the blend brush. So in this case, this is going to be my blendy brush. I'm going to wet it, clear water. And this will be my painty brush. I'm going to wet it, but I'm going to dip it. So again, blendy brush, I'm going to do like this one time, get the water off it, maybe dip it on here. I don't want it to be too dry, but I don't want to be too wet either. So the idea here is like when I showed you the tree trunk, I'm going to go on the outside here. Let me see if I can do this better. I'm going to rotate this. It's hard for me to put my hand here on this lip and paint. So I'll do this over here. Set this up. I'll put the paint back here. Try not to spill it and ruin the painting, although that would make a cool new painting. All right, brush down. All right, so let's see where I'm going here. Okay, so the idea is I'm going to paint the dark along this edge, and then I'm going to drag it down here to help outline the leaf. Same thing with here. Same thing with here. In fact, let me show you here because these two on the camera are so light, you can barely even tell there's a separate leaf here and here, right? Let's do that first. So again, think about it. Light coming from, let's think about this. I'm going to make it so the light is coming from the best possible place to give us the coolest shadows. Let's see. So thinking about these, wanting to show them, I'm going to go ahead and do, gosh, I'm tempted to come this way and shadow this because it's hard to see on there. And then maybe the back sides of this. Let's try that. So here, so I will start here and use the very dark stripe. This is a damp brush, right? And I'm going to go right on top of this line. Pick some of it up. And now I'm going to blend it. So all I'm doing is brushing out into this other area. It's wet. And if I think, wow, it's a little bit too dark, the shadow, again, I'm grabbing a little bit more water, just blending it out over to here. Okay. Let's continue. So wet the line and then pull it to the right. Match the shape on your blend pull so it looks like the leaf is making a shadow. Yeah. I'm coming over with a little more clear water. Like, so if I want to make it gradient a little bit more or take a little bit back out, just come back there with clear water. Now you can distinctly, hopefully, see that there's 2 leaves here. Light coming this way, this side of this one. If it's too dark, if you think it's too dark, wet your brush. Just come across it. The cool thing with this mix, burnt umber and French ultramarine, is it lifts. If I come back here later and I say, hey, I don't like it, it's coming right off. Promise. You can also use a towel. Like if you went out too far, just dab it a little bit rather than try to drag that out. Okay, so let's say the back of this will also show a shadow because light's coming this way, right? Let's go like this on here and pull this down. Little by little, it raises all these details out of here. And there is a stem here. So let's see, again, light this way. Let's do the other side of the stem. We're just going to make a line like that. And where there's maybe not a stem, because it wasn't there a second ago, it'll be here now. And on this side, you could just put a I'm pulling this one. And if I want to dim that one, I may pull this just a little bit to soften it and just make sure it's here. Yeah. Again, grabbing a little bit of towel. Now I can come back here later with some water and pull this off if I want easily. So I want to clean it. Clean it up a little. Just do that. Now I have the shadow of the stem. Just enough to say, oh wow, there's a stem there. Light coming this way. Okay, so now thinking about it, I'm gonna go ahead and shadow these ones also. So I'm not gonna do shadows down too many layers though, because it takes away from the depth, I think. I'm gonna go ahead and do this one. And you can help the shape too, like that shape was a little rounded, I want it to be pointed. So with my shadow, if I make a pointed top like I did here, I can help the shape go more to what I want it to be. Again, just taking this brush and pulling that down this way, creating a blend. It leaves the outline hard and it blends this way. This is doing it at the kind of micro level. That's why I wanted to do the big one, just so I could show you the technique before I did this. You said, what is he doing? Doesn't matter how fat this line is. I mean, it does on here, but I mean, it doesn't matter how fat it is when you do your work. You're going to blend. You're always going to use the side where you want the hard edge and then draw that side over. Light, light, light. And even if the light is a little, it's not exactly coming just this way, I'm still going for this side of things. And I hope you see what I'm saying. If I shadowed everything, it wouldn't be as cool as if I just picked the side. Some of these will lend themselves to deeper shadows, right? So the first pass, it kind of loosens it, and then you go back and spread it. Loosen it and pull it. It's funny too, the more you do it, the better you get at it, because it's kind of weird. It depends on your brushes and your paint and everything else. So the first couple of lines you make won't be near as good as you start going, because you start feeling it and realizing what you need to do to bring it out. See how nice that leaves the shape of the leaf, and it creates a shadow at the same time. Light coming this way. Of course, my phone has to ring. We'll just let it ring. I apologize. So let's see. So here. And maybe a little bit along this line, although I'm pushing it now because I kind of want to leave this side unshadowed. I still want to create some kind of illusion of depth here. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. Look at that. See how those shadows work? You couldn't even tell the difference between these two leaves, and now all of a sudden it looks like there's a leaf on top of a leaf. It's that easy. Just a little bit of blending. Okay, I'm going to cut this now, and I'm going to come back, and we'll put the colors on the top, and we'll start to do some veins. But I just want this to soak in for a little bit, and I'll probably be back in about a half an hour for part 7. Thank you so much for spending some time with me.